When the flat line echoed through the sterile hospital room, I was completely alone holding my mother's cold hand. No dad, no siblings, not even a fake excuse. They were too busy at an upscale restaurant, celebrating the pre-sale of Mom's multi-million-dollar family estate, assuming she'd already passed. But as the doctor solemnly called the time of death, the head nurse gently handed me an envelope. "Your mother wanted you to have this the second she was gone," she whispered. Inside was an old brass key, a list of obscure offshore bank names, and a chilling handwritten instruction. "Give them exactly what they think they inherited, Audrey. Let them choke on their own greed." Before we dive into the chilling truth of how a dying woman outsmarted an entire family of thieves, take a quick second to comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. My name is Audrey, and I am 29 years old. For the past 3 months, my entire life was reduced to the 4 walls of room 304 at St. Jude's Memorial Hospital. As a freelance graphic designer, I could work from anywhere. So I chose to set up my makeshift office right beside my mother's bedside, watching the slow, agonizing decline of the only person who truly loved me. But while I adjusted monitors and held her frail hand, the rest of my family was completely absent. My father, Richard, and my 2 older siblings, Bradley and Chloe, treated Mom's terminal illness like an inconvenient chore that clashed with their busy, important schedules. The text messages on my phone were proof of their calculated cruelty. Just 4 hours before Mom took her final breath, I sent a frantic group message telling them the doctor said it was time to come. Bradley replied, "Handling estate logistics with the broker. Text if something changes." Chloe sent a brief text saying she was at a spa appointment to clear her mind from the stress. They weren't grieving. They were already dividing up the spoils of her multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio. As I looked out the rain-streaked window of the hospital room, the harsh reality settled in. I was entirely on my own, surrounded by their artificial excuses, waiting for the inevitable hammer to fall. The funeral flowers were still fresh, their cloying scent still clinging to my black dress, when my father called an emergency meeting. We weren't gathered to comfort one another or share fond memories of the woman who had anchored our lives for decades. Instead, Richard, Bradley, and Chloe sat across the massive mahogany table in our family's luxury Sacramento estate, looking more like board members ready to execute a hostile corporate takeover than a family in mourning. The atmosphere was thick with greed, and before the probate attorney could even unseal the envelope, my siblings had already taken out their notebooks, ready to calculate their shares of Mom's hard-earned logistics empire and property portfolio. "Let's make this quick," Richard said, his voice entirely devoid of the grief a husband should feel after losing his wife of 30 years. He slid a document toward me, a smug smile tugging at the corner of his lips. It was a copy of an estate plan dated 5 years ago. As the attorney read the terms aloud, the trap became clear. The primary estate, the Lake Tahoe villa, and the thriving logistics company were to be split equally among the 3 of them. And my share? A measly $15,000 caretaker's allowance. Chloe leaned back, swirling her designer water glass, her eyes dripping with synthetic pity. "Don't look so shocked, Audrey. You've spent your 20s playing around with graphic design. You simply don't have the business mind required to manage real, complex wealth. We're doing you a favor by keeping you out of the stressful corporate decisions." Bradley nodded in agreement, already texting his luxury car broker. They truly believed they had successfully sidelined me, utterly convinced I would walk away quietly with my pennies. Back in the suffocating quiet of my cramped apartment, I finally allowed myself to break down. But as the tears blurred my vision, my gaze fell upon the sealed envelope the nurse had slipped into my hand at the hospital. Breaking the heavy wax seal, I pulled out a handwritten letter in Mom's elegant, unmistakable cursive, along with a heavy, tarnished brass key. The very first line shattered any remaining illusions I had about my family. Audrey, if you are reading this, the vultures have already shown their true colors. Do not shed a single tear for their betrayal, because I have spent my final months ensuring they pay for it. My heart hammered against my ribs as I read on. Mom revealed that nearly a year ago, while she was weakened by the brutal physical toll of chemotherapy, she discovered Richard was having an affair with a younger woman. Worse, she caught Bradley and Chloe secretly conspiring with our family's corrupt corporate accountant to manipulate the old estate paperwork, treating her survival like a countdown clock. They thought she was too sick to notice, too fragile to fight back. They didn't realize that a mother's love, mixed with a betrayal that deep, creates something fiercely calculating. The letter instructed me to take the brass key to a private security vault downtown, completely separate from the family's regular financial institutions. Inside that vault, you will find the real truth, Audrey. Everything they think they own is a mirage. Do exactly as I instructed. Let them gloat, and watch how quickly their greed becomes their own anchor. Staring at the heavy key in my palm, the crushing weight of grief suddenly transformed into a sharp, burning desire for absolute justice. The private security vault downtown was located in a dimly lit, high-security basement that felt miles away from the bright corporate offices my father frequented. With trembling hands, I turned the heavy brass key inside box number 882. As the heavy metal drawer slid open, I didn't find old family jewelry or sentimental tokens. Instead, it was stacked with thick financial ledgers, certified court disclosures, and a freshly minted corporate trust agreement. My mother had spent her final 6 months quietly executing a masterful, invisible counterattack while my family was busy picking out luxury cars and vacation packages. The true financial records painted a terrifying picture for anyone holding the old family estate. Mom hadn't just sat back and let them manipulate her. She had completely hollowed out the entire empire from the inside. Over the last half-year, she had legally transferred $5.2 million in clean, unencumbered liquid assets directly into a private, protected trust under my name alone. Because she built the logistics company before marrying Richard, it was her separate property to move. But the real twist, the poison pill, was what she left behind for them. The primary luxury home, the Lake Tahoe villa, and the logistics company weren't the gold mines my siblings imagined. To fund her secret asset transfers and penalize their betrayal, Mom had heavily leveraged every single property. She had intentionally defaulted on massive corporate loans and left millions in hidden state tax liens attached directly to the business infrastructure. The estate they were so eager to steal wasn't an inheritance at all. It was a ticking financial time bomb of toxic debt. They were inheriting properties worth $4 million, but saddled with $5.5 million in legally binding liabilities. To ensure my mother's legal trap snapped shut flawlessly, I had to deliver the performance of a lifetime. The following morning, I walked into the family home looking completely defeated, dressing in oversized clothes and keeping my eyes locked onto the floor. My father, Richard, didn't even look up from his tablet as I entered, while Bradley and Chloe sat with smug, satisfied grins, practically radiating the arrogant energy of victors who had easily outmaneuvered a weak opponent. A thick stack of corporate waivers, property release forms, and liability transfer documents was pushed across the polished wood table toward me. "Just sign here, Audrey," Chloe said, sliding a designer pen into my hand with a patronizing pat on my shoulder. "Let's get this over with so you can take your $15,000 and start your little creative hobby elsewhere." I sniffled on cue, pretending to fight back tears of devastation as I gripped the pen with trembling fingers. I signed every single document, officially waiving any right to contest the old 5-year-old will and transferring full operational control of the logistics business to them. My siblings instantly burst into laughter, exchanging triumphant high fives and openly mocking how easily they had sidelined me. They truly believed they had stripped me of my birthright. They had absolutely no idea that by eagerly signing those exact papers to claim their prize, they were legally binding themselves to millions in toxic debt. The trap was officially sprung. The atmosphere inside the probate attorney's office was celebratory. Richard had brought a bottle of expensive champagne, and Chloe was already showing Bradley photos of the luxury penthouse she planned to buy once the estate sale closed. They had brought in an external buyer, ready to liquidate the logistics company and the properties this very afternoon. But the second the clock struck 2, the heavy oak doors opened, and James Mitchell walked in, flanked by the court-appointed forensic auditor and 2 armed legal couriers. The smiles vanished from my family's faces in an instant. "What is the meaning of this interruption?" Richard demanded, slamming his hand on the table. "Audrey has already signed the waivers. This estate is closed." James Mitchell calmly sat beside me and unzipped his leather briefcase. "Actually, Mr. Whitaker, the estate is just opening. I am presenting the legally binding final will of your late wife, executed 6 weeks ago, along with a complete financial disclosure that your attorney seems to have completely missed." As the forensic auditor handed the certified documents across the table, my family's high-priced lawyer began to skim the pages. Within seconds, the color drained completely from his face, and his hands began to visibly shake. "What does it say?" Bradley snapped, leaning over his lawyer's shoulder. "It says," the lawyer whispered, his voice cracking with pure horror, "that you didn't inherit a fortune. The houses and the business are leveraged with $5.5 million in immediate tax liens and defaulted corporate debt. And by forcing Audrey to sign those waivers yesterday, you legally assumed 100% of the personal liabilities. You are all completely wiped out." 3 months later, the dust had completely settled on the ruins of my family's greed. Unable to refinance or pay the millions in sudden crushing liabilities, Richard, Bradley, and Chloe were forced into a humiliating public bankruptcy. The luxury family home and the Lake Tahoe villa were seized by creditors, the logistics business collapsed overnight, and Richard was forced to move into a tiny, rundown apartment near the outskirts of the city. Meanwhile, I am sitting on the sun-drenched deck of a beautiful coastal cottage in Carmel, completely at peace, with $5.2 million safely funding my new life. If you were in my shoes, would you have left them the properties, or would you have sent them straight to prison? Comment your thoughts below. The screen features 2 more incredible high-stakes stories you'll love. Thank you for watching until the very end.